morning. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or at home via, I almost said Zoom, but I meant YouTube or Facebook, we're thrilled to have you. Lucia, our song leader, is on vacation this week, and so Diane has gracefully stepped into the role of song leader today. So let's begin today, and we're going to start by singing a song that celebrates our values and commitment to inclusivity in the United Church of Christ called No Matter. So let's sing together.
No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, you're welcome, welcome in this place. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, accepted, welcomed by God's grace. For we are family, meant to be, purpose for eternity, born in love from above, God's community. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, you're welcome, welcome in this place. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, accepted, welcomed by God's grace. And diversity, unity, harmony for all to see, justice and equity, God's community. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, you're welcome, welcome in this place. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, accepted, welcomed by God's grace. Together we will sing, worship bring, hands and hearts outstretched to all. Jesus praise, hearts ablaze, listen to God's call. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, you're welcome, welcome in this place. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, accepted, welcomed by God's grace. The God who spoke through Christ speaks to us. Listen to our Savior's call. Welcome home, welcome in, welcome one and all. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, you're welcome, welcome in this place. No matter who, no matter what, no matter where you are on the journey of life, accepted, welcomed by God's grace. And now let's join together in our second song, helping us to prepare our hearts and minds for today's message. As we gather, may your spirit work within us. As we gather, may we glorify your name. Knowing well that as our hearts begin to worship, we'll be blessed because we came. We'll be blessed because we came. As we gather, may your spirit work within us.
So glad to have you with us this morning. For those who might be joining us for the first time, either in the sanctuary or online, let me say this about the community you've joined. We are a church that has three defining pieces to our identity. We are what's called a just peace congregation, which is largely self-explanatory in terms of that core value of peace. Secondly, we are a progressive Christian community, which means we don't have to denigrate or deny the faith of another or another faith tradition in order us to follow Jesus. And finally, we are an open and affirming community that not only allows but encourages everyone to be nothing other than their authentic self. And while that welcome was originally extended primarily to members of the LGBTQIA+ community, where so many churches had gone out of their way to make them known they were explicitly rejected, our welcome extends even beyond that. All folks are welcome exactly as they are. Now, you may wonder why it is that we take time every week to talk about those values. I had a great reminder of that this week. You know, in our society, we tend to equate success with the size of a community. And there's a worldwide community called Hillsong. And boy, they were in 30 countries. They had over 150,000 members. And then their story got told. And let's just say it wasn't always pretty, because sometimes the pursuit of this and the pursuit of folks in the pews caused them to lose sight of what the values are of Christ. And so that's why every week, you know, we pause and do this. There was even a website that's set up to track communities that had lost their way. It was called Preachers and Sneakers. And they took pictures of pastors on Instagram and Facebook and then priced the shoes that they wore. The cheap ones were around $800, and they went as high as $6,000. And boy, anytime you go down that path, you need to remember who you are and whose you are. So that's why every single week we pause so that we never lose sight of our defining values. The other defining value that's a little unique about us is we are one of the very few Christian traditions that's called non-creedal. It means there is no established right way of belief, whether it's from the right or the left. We create room for people to articulate and express their experience of God in a variety of ways. Is it easy to do that? Let me tell you, as a pastor, not so much, because there's always a part of us that wants the person on our left and right to use the words we use and to like the things we like, but boy, are we enriched when we extend beyond our perspective and embrace others. So today, as we come to worship, I celebrate the fullness of who we are. And as we come today, I'm going to invite Stacy to join with me as we lead you in the call to worship. It comes directly from our psalm of the day. People of faith have been saying these words for nearly 5,000 years, so let us join heart as we begin together. I exalt you, God, because you pulled me up. You didn't let my enemies celebrate over me.
Lord, my God, I cried out to you for help, and you healed me.
God, you brought me up from the grave, brought me back to life from among those going down to the pit.
You who are faithful to the Lord, sing praises to God. Give thanks to God's holy name.
And so, as a people who have been brought up and brought back to life in so many ways, we're going to start with an opening song today that's not just reserved for Thanksgiving, for in a way, every day is Thanksgiving. So let's sing together, Give Thanks.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because He's given let us sing the children in with This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine.
Right,
Shine.
With our COVID precautions, the bulk of our kiddos are still out in the patio area. But we're going to welcome in via Zoom live our Children and Youth Ministry Coordinator, Emma Wilkins. Emma, are you there this morning?
yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. I love that energy. Emma, I know that there's a couple things that are coming up that we wanted to kind of highlight for the kids and the families so they're aware. The first thing is next week. Could you tell us a little bit about next week?
Yeah, next week we have family service, which we do quarterly. And we'll be including the children for a lot of the service. And it's something that we really enjoy doing is to, the CYM to be a big part of the service next week.
Excellent. A great way to celebrate Mothers or Mothering Sunday. And I think there's another event that the CYM is pulling together for June 12th after Music Sunday. Could you take a moment and just give us a save the date update on that?
Yeah, certainly. So on June the 12th after Music Sunday, which we're all excited about because the kids will be singing there as well, we're going to all head over to Saronia Park and we're going to have a picnic and we're going to play some games and just celebrate the beginning of the summer.
Excellent. And so with that, we are really blessed to have a special children's story. The month of May has two important designations. One is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the second is Asian Heritage Month. So this week, we have one of our former members who moved to New York State of a Vietnamese background who's going to be sharing a wonderful story with us, Maya Sykes. So with that, Maya, take it away.
Hi, my name is Mai, and I will be reading I Am Golden by Ava Chen. Illustrated by Sophie Dow. We named you May. Not like May the month, which means beautiful, like the country we live in now. May Guo, America. What do you see when you look in the mirror, May? Do you see beauty? We see eyes that point toward the sun, that give us the warmth and joy of 1,000 rays when you smile. We see hair as inky black and smooth as a peaceful night sky. We see skin brushed with gold. We see the hopes and dreams of your ancestors when we look at you. We journeyed into the unknown to give you a new path to trailblaze. In this upside-down world, clever child, you have become our teacher and our translator. See the upside-down world? Our words won't always be enough to comfort you, and we won't be able to be with you every step of the way. We know you feel alone sometimes. People tell you that you're different and you can't be one of them. But we promise, there is power in being different. Are you ready, brave May, to hear about your secret power? You are never alone. You carry a golden flame inside you, and it's always with you. You are made of dragons, of phoenixes, of jade rabbits, and of monkey kings. You are the lotus flower unfurling, triumphant and bright, in the darkest water. You are the first bamboo stalk piercing the soil that will overtake the sky. Your voice is the call of the magpie, joyful and unapologetic. It's a strange world we live in. People will call you different with one breath, and then say that we all look the same with the next angry breath. But they don't know that each of our golden flames flickers distinctly, that our stories are infinitely unique. We are artists, scientists, athletes. We are dancers, teachers, inventors. We are architects, actors, and writers. You can hear all our stories when we gather as a family. There will be celebrations. Oh, we love to celebrate, with plate upon plate of delectable deliciousness that will tickle all your senses. The hot pop and sizzle of garlic in a wok, the lazy curls of steam from freshly kneaded bao, the sesame balls that will leave your fingers slick and sweet. It's one of my favorites. We gather to hope, to dream, and to sing your praises, May. To send love to your Popo and Gong Gong, who are not in May Guo with us. To pay tribute to those we've loved and lost along the way as oceans and worlds and cultures separated us. Have we taught you the word Ming yet? It means destiny, May. Our destiny was you. Our Ming is to be the keepers of your flame, to guide you as best we can. We see you, we see your golden heart. You are beauty, but so much more. You are strength, you are power. You, May, are golden. Say it with us, believe it. I am golden. Okay, thank you. Hi, my
I am golden. What a message that we all need to hear. You know, when we talk about race in the United States, oftentimes even the most well-meaning of us have blind spots or blinders, and we talk about it in a way that subtly reinforces racism. For instance, I was talking a few years ago with one of the leaders from the community, and they were bemoaning the lack of diversity. And it became very clear that the person meant black and white diversity. So I said, so are you aware that we have folks from the Filipino tradition, from the Taiwanese tradition, from the Chinese and Japanese? They were not. And even last year, as the country said it's important to talk about race in the context of George Floyd, once again, so many of our sisters and brothers of different racial or ethnic locations were left out of the conversation. And that's why a month like this month, Asian Heritage Month, is so important. So that the church, including this church, says, I see you. You are golden. So I want to invite us into a time of prayer as we sort of let go of some of those blinders that might limit us in our perceptions of what race is, what the diversity of God's family means. And on a Sunday when we talk about one who was really opened up, Saul. So let's go into this time of prayer, asking that God will continue this process for us. So one of the tools that God uses to open and enrich us is song. And today we are blessed as the chancel choir continues to grow.
Our anthem today is titled One Step He Leads, with words and music by Pepper Choplin. This song of assurance reminds us that we don't know what the future holds for us, but if we put our trust in Jesus and follow his lead, we can take that one step to follow him. Sometimes I worry and wish I could see what lies ahead, what the future will be. But God calls me on to follow in faith, that He'll take tomorrow if I give Him today. One step He leads, and one step I'll follow. God knows my needs, and He will supply. I don't know the future and all that's in store, so I'll take one step to follow my Lord.
Jesus said, leave all your worries, forget all your cares.
What you will eat and what you will wear, but seek first my kingdom, and all that is right, your need shall be given as you live in the light. One step He leads, and one step I'll follow. God knows my needs, and He will supply. I don't know the future and all that's in store, so I'll take one step to follow. Just one step He leads, and one step I'll follow. God knows my needs, and He will supply. I don't know the future and all that's in store, so I'll take one step to follow my Lord, So I'll take one step to follow my Lord, my Lord.
Thank you, chancel choir, for that blessing. What a powerful step. So this past Monday afternoon, we kicked off a new group here at church, or perhaps I should say a newish group, since I was actually resurrecting a program I'd started when I first arrived 12 and a half years ago. The group's called Sacred Grounds. Now, the purpose of that group is simple. It takes a text that I will be preaching 6 days later and invites participants to talk about the passage in order to give me a better idea of what concerns and questions the passage raises. That way, when I preach on Sundays, I have a better sense of what would draw folks in. Now, when preparing for that very first meeting this past Monday, I made a decision that I really didn't think too much about at the time. The focus scripture for today was technically just the first 6 verses of the 9th chapter in the book of Acts. But the people who pulled the lectionary or the schedule of readings together indicated that you could include the next 14 verses as well in order to give people a better understanding of the context. And so I did. I gave them all 20 verses. No big deal. Right? Wrong. For as the week went by, I reflected on the things that the group had talked about. And our primary focus had been on Saul, who would later become the Apostle Paul, or a gentleman by the name of Ananias, who interpreted God's actions for Saul. And in focusing on them, I realized in retrospect that we had made a bit of a mistake. For the 14 verses I had tacked on detracted from what commentators said is the real focus of the story. I can hear those in the sanctuary who were a part of that conversation last Monday thinking, well, if Saul isn't the focus, then who or what is? Well, listen as Stacy reads this morning's passage as it was originally intended, stopping with verse 6. Then let's come back together and see if we can figure out what the focus is. This is Acts chapter 9, verses 1 through 6, as read from the Common English Bible.
Meanwhile, Saul was still spewing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest, seeking letters to the synagogues in Damascus. If he found persons who belonged to the way, whether men or women, these letters would authorize him to take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. During the journey, as he approached Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven encircled him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice asking him, "Saul, Saul, why are you harassing me?" Saul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" "I am Jesus, whom you are harassing," came the reply. "Now get up and enter the city. You will be told what you must do."
And thus ends the sacred reading. So let's go back to the question I posed. If it's not primarily about Saul, then who or what is the passage about? Well, the answer to the question, a scholar by the name of Joseph Harver says, is rooted in the very first 2 verses of the passage that tell us about this Saul. In those verses, Joseph Harvard points out, we are told, and I quote, God chose someone who had been a witness against the followers of Christ to become a powerful witness for Christ. And because of that, the story then is not so much about Saul as it is about the way God works to change lives. And then Mr. Harvard goes one step further in his analysis and brings it closer to home. And he writes, the main character in this and in every conversion story, including our own, is God. For it is not us, but God who changes lives. And that, friends, is why those who pulled the lectionary together this week decided it was best to stop with verse 6 and not get into all the details about Saul. For the reading of that story emphasizes that Saul, at the moment we leave him, was all of those things we spend our lives trying not to be. Completely helpless, completely open, completely vulnerable, completely dependent upon the assurance and the direction that he received from the voice that suggested he was no longer in control. The last thing he heard, we are told, you will be told what you must do. Now, I have to admit, I like the 20-verse version of the story much better, where it would suggest that we are more of the focus of the story, for it makes us feel a little more clever and important for having affirmed or made the right decision, right? Whew, but stopping at verse 6, where God is in control, that is so much harder to do. So what would it look like, not from the perspective of 2,000 years ago, but from today, to take an approach to life that I would call the 6-verse version? Well, to answer the question of what that would look like, I turn to the story of a man whose very life and career helps bring together the two observances we are honoring this May: Asian Heritage Sunday and Mental Health Awareness Month. And that man's name is Daryl Wing Sue. Let me tell you why I say he brings these observances together and our faith alive in such powerful ways. Daryl was born to parents of Chinese descent in the community of Portland, Oregon. And for the first years of his childhood, Daryl and his 5 siblings were raised in a part of Portland called Chinatown. But as Daryl got older, the parents decided to move them out into the suburbs. And it was shortly after arriving in the suburbs that they began to be singled out and targeted for being different. And Daryl and his siblings wondered, why are people so afraid of difference? Well, the years passed quickly for young Daryl, and he was forced to set aside that question for a while. He graduated from high school. He went on to Oregon State University and planned to study biology. But it was as he began the course of study that he realized that same question from his childhood that he had asked. Why are people threatened with difference? That question continued to haunt him. So he switched his major from biology to psychology. He then went on to graduate from Oregon State and earned both an MS and a PhD from the University of Oregon. He had got the very best of American education. The courses were interesting, and yet Daryl couldn't help but notice something. All of the academic materials that were used had been derived primarily from Western cultures that did not see family like his culture saw family. Nor did any of the course material honor the independence between family members to the degree that his culture did. Daryl, this PhD who had done everything that the smartest American could do, wrote these words: I always felt that the type of information taught to me did not represent my racial, ethnic background, nor my life experience. Can you imagine a PhD saying that? Nevertheless, Daryl kind of did what Saul would have done in the early years of life. He didn't want to rock the boat. He wanted to get started in his career, so he trudged along and did what he was told so he could succeed. But then one day after he had earned his PhD, he had what I would call his road to Damascus moment. He had finished the doctoral work and settled in as a counselor at the University of California at Berkeley, and he was counseling a student of Asian descent. And the student was sharing that he was wrestling with whether or not he wanted to change majors, and he said, "Before I can do so, I will have to talk to my mother." And when Daryl heard the student say that, something clicked. He knew that if the student had shared that with any other counselor on staff from a Western background, that the student would be diagnosed with what Western society called unhealthy attachment issues with the mother. He would be told that he was pathological because of his cultural value. And in that burst of insight, Darrell's life, much like Saul's on the road, was changed forever. In 1972, Darrell pulled together 10 other students, including his brother Stanley, and they founded the Asian American Psychological Association. They drew straws, and he was picked as the first president of the group and started its first newsletter. And they set about goals to do simple things with one of the professional groups in the country. They wanted to begin to introduce cultural diversity to the American Psychological Association, for there was little, if any. And they wanted to begin expanding research, specifically in the experience of Asian Americans. In 1981, he published a book called Counseling the Culturally Diverse. And a few years later, the very first ever handbook on Asian American psychology. How were his efforts received? Kind of like Paul's in certain crowds. Not well. The dominant Western establishment said, any good counseling is good counseling. It works with everybody. Now, if you want a definition of white privilege, there it is. But thankfully, in and through Darrell, God knew and did so much better. Like Saul, God took Darrell exactly where he was at that point in his life with all of his education and background. A man who was traveling down the road of expectations that others had laid out for him, and he was convinced how he knew that things would unfold professionally, right? Wrong. God used all of that to throw Darrell off track. And in that process, brought expressions of salvation and grace to hundreds of thousands of Asian Americans who, without Darrell, would not have been able to get the help they needed in a culturally appropriate way. Thanks be to God. And you know, as I close, I'll say that if God can take strong and laser-like focused individuals like Saul and Darrell, shake them up and open them up to do the work that is desperately needed, then you know what? Maybe God can do that with us too, if we allow God to. And so as I prepare you to saddle back up onto the donkeys that we rode in on, and as we ease into this process of re-entry from COVID, my word of caution is don't be too in love with the GPSs that you've been following or the travel maps where you have your journey all laid out. Don't assume that you know all of the twists and turns that lie ahead. Instead, be humble. Be open like Saul and Darrell to the ways in which God's life and God's light can burst forth through you, and follow the light where it leads. For if you do that, I promise it won't just be you who is affected. As was the case with Saul and Darrell, that burst of light that manifests to and through you will change the world. Amen. Much appreciated. And while I say thank you to Gina also. Usually Saturday, this week Friday, she spends some time beautifying the chancel area. And it is not a one-person show. If you'd like to join Gina either on a Saturday or at least provide financial resources that can help make it happen, see Gina. So friends, one of the ways that we travel and through which the light can be made real for us, like it was with Daryl, is to not travel alone. Daryl built community around him. So as we build community, I want you to hear what your sisters and brothers are asking prayer for on their journey. The first comes from Diane. Diane says, I would like prayers for my nephew and his young family as they deal with being temporarily homeless after losing their home in the tornado that went through Andover, Kansas on Friday night. So we remember your nephew and family. From Stacy, prayers for Kathy Shue, her brother and family as her brother heals from spinal surgery and begins his cancer treatment. So we hold the Shues in our prayers. Prayers also for mothers today that have lost a child as we head into Mother's Day. That can be a especially difficult time. And I would add that on Sunday evenings at 7, the church has committed itself to a grief support group. Now, no one is yet attending, and I know that grief support groups can be a challenge because it's awfully hard to step into community and share, but pray for the group that it could be that light to help support folks. And Stacy, thank you so much for that prayer. So friends, as we go forward, and not just, I guess there are some that have come in electronically as well. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Emily.
All righty. We have a prayer from Lake today, and her prayers is, I'm going home on Tuesday and I can't get a list of caregivers of interviews until I'm home. Please pray that I can get my needs met very quickly.
Great. And Lake has been in facilities and hospitals since November, so that is something to truly celebrate.
We have no more prayers from
All
online
right.
today.
So our hearts and lives are full this day, and I will invite us into a time of prayer. We'll go first through the sung call to prayer, Deep Peace, and then for those who might want a moment to gather communal elements, whether it's at home or in the sanctuary, you can do so. And then I'll close our time with a pastoral prayer. So let us go to God.
Peace, peace, deep peace, my peace I give to you. Peace, peace, deep
Gracious God, as we gather this day, we can relate on so many levels to the story of Saul and how he was thrown off the path of his choice or the path of intention through the magnificence of your light and your love. So many of us are traveling through life expecting, anticipating things to unfold in a particular way. And when they don't, we are devastated. But we give thanks for the power of the story that reminds us that in and through our lives, there is so much more than just our agenda, our will, our intention. There is your love and grace that can carry us through even the most challenging of times. So we pause now for a moment in the midst of our vulnerability to partake of the bread or cracker and the juice, water or wine, as we reconnect with your presence in our life. And so, gracious God, in those moments when we are close enough to feel and to touch and taste your presence, we give thanks. But we give thanks for those tools with which you've left us that connect us to you in those moments when resources seem so far, when all we have is the memory of the prayer that you taught your beloved over 2,000 years ago. And so, together now, we lift that prayer on our road. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So each tradition has its own way of responding to the message or the word for the day. We don't do altar calls here, but we do opportunities to respond in faith in other ways. So I know we have at least 2 folks, and as many as 3. Each week we'll have up to 3. So I think we have Kathy and then Gina. And Gina, if you could move into place, that'd be great. Morning.
Today, we extended ticket sales 1 week for nursery school. Today is the last day to pick up your tickets or purchase your tickets for the concert. It's our 75th anniversary. Wayne Clark and I had a really great day yesterday meeting with one of the musicians, and it's going to be an amazing night. So we hope you'll all join us, and if you still want to buy tickets, I'll be on the patio, and if you've got yours, come on down.
Excellent. Thank you much. And Gina.
I wanted to say that if anyone would like to have, is this on or not?
Well, that's okay.
There. Well, if anyone would like to help with flowers or with coffee hour, maybe you've heard this before, please let me know. We are purposely allowing you to come forward rather than having a sign-up sheet in the narthex, because it's important that we take initiative for those things that we care to do, really.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. One last thing really quick, and this is part in the generational transition with church. When I arrived and many of the leaders were in the greatest generation, when we had a beloved member of the community pass, the community came together for a reception. We no longer have a generation to pass it to. Folks who are younger don't have that same degree of commitment or drive. And so this Saturday we have a memorial service for Dolores Burton. And the family would like to have a reception. Now, Gina has gracefully stepped forward to be a point person, and one of the neighbors will help. But if you're able to assist in any way, whether it's with setup, we don't have a committee because we don't have people to be in the committee. So that's part of the challenge of these days. But Gina will be our sort of point person, and it would mean so much to the Burton family to see that the 50 years the family gave to the church are celebrated and appreciated. So Gina, thank you for that. All right. So as we move forward into this week, our hope and prayer is that we can be the kind of folks like Daryl in the sermon illustration today and the Apostle Paul, to go where we are led. So our closing song today is Cry of My Heart, and Diane will lead us.
It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. Teach me your holy ways, O Lord, so I can walk in your truth. Teach me your holy ways, O Lord, and make me wholly devoted to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. Open my eyes so I can see the wonderful things that you do. Open my heart up more and more and make me wholly devoted to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life.
So my vocational track, I started out as a teacher and then found my way into ministry, and some folks have asked why I made that choice. And it really had to do with my social location as a member of a marginalized community, because for many years I thought education and education alone was the answer to the problems. But once you move into a marginalized community, you learn, like Daryl learned, of the challenges. You remember that in the early and educated days, the country's founder created a document that said all men are created equal. There were documents that said Africans, by very educated men, were worth 3/5 of a human life. There were, in the year 1946, the best and the brightest of the country said that it was best to inter or lock up Japanese Americans, that was what needed to be done. And even as late as 2015, there were folks who said, marital rights for same-sex couples, no, on all parties. So education is wonderful and it can inform us, but it has its bounds and limitations that reflect the attitudes of the majority. And that's why today's story is so powerful. It knocks us out of that place of arrogance or assumption that we have arrived. For every generation thinks they don't have a blind spot, and guess what? Every generation does. But the Holy Spirit takes us to that place that expands our hearts, our minds, and our awarenesses, and makes all things possible through folks like Saul, Daryl, and you. So let's go forward and continue to grow into the magnificence of the world God has for us. And as we soar above those limitations, our closing song is appropriately On Eagle's Wings.